Greetings, friends. I hope you are all doing great. If you are not, I hope that things get better for you. Thank God I'm okay. Um, and it's good to be back. Um, if you notice, the setting is different. That's because I'm not at home. So that's why the setting is different. I have traveled and actually I'm on a tight schedule. But since I promised that I would be releasing a video today, I found time to record this video, and I hope that I'm going to try to be brief, but I hope that my answer will be satisfying. And I hope that some other time I can once again tackle this issue and go into further detail. So let's get right into it. For today, I'm going to briefly discuss the meaning of life in the context of evil and suffering. You know, this question that people always ask, is there meaning to life? I've noticed that I have often raised this question within the context of misfortune, suffering, and evil. And I see that a lot of people, when they ask this question, it's also in the context of suffering and evil. After people have had some sort of difficulty, whether it's physical, financial, or someone they love or care about is going through something terrible. And then people will ask, what is the meaning of life? What's the point of all of this if they're suffering, you know? And so this is what I'm going to be dealing with today. And there's something I have written down because I'm going to try and make this brief. So it's always best to read a little bit. So let me read something. The challenges the existence of evil and suffering pose towards the meaning of life. So yeah, this is what we're going to be dealing with. So let me briefly give my perspective on this. Now, in the first video, I answered the question, is there meaning in life? And I said there are two answers. At least I gave two answers, saying that if you are an atheist, I gave an answer from an atheistic perspective. And then if you believe in God, I give an answer from a theistic perspective. If you believe in Darwinian evolution, there's obviously no meaning in life. Now, if you believe that God created the world, then there is meaning in life. No matter how you feel about God, or if you sometimes feel that God is listening to you or not, but because you believe that there's a creator and he created you on purpose, with a purpose in life, then there has to be absolute meaning, okay? So why did I give an answer based on these two worldviews? Because these are the two most famous worldviews when it comes to origin. The theistic creation, and when I'm speaking of creation, I'm speaking of biblical creation, and evolutionary, let's say evolution, Darwinian evolution. These are the two famous concepts of origin, and absolute meaning is associated with our origin, okay? So that's why for the first question, is there meaning in life? I gave an answer from a Darwinian standpoint, and I gave an answer from a theistic standpoint. All right. In the second video, the question was, what is the meaning of life? In Darwinian evolution, if you haven't watched the second video where I answered this second, what is the meaning of life, I suggest you check it out, because here I'm just going to briefly touch on it in order to deal with today's topic. So in the second video, what is the meaning of life? In a Darwinian perspective, human beings have a value that benefits evolution, that benefits natural selection, because human beings contribute to reproduction and it keeps the species going on. Yes, from a human perspective going on. Now, in theistic evolution, human beings have an intrinsic value. sorry, not theistic evolution, but in theism, biblical creationism, human beings have intrinsic value. Theistic evolution, it doesn't give absolute value to human beings. It doesn't give intrinsic value. It's like Darwinian evolution. And let me just repeat that in case someone got confused with the explanation I gave. Darwinian evolution and in theistic evolution, there's no absolute meaning to life and there's no intrinsic value to human beings. In theism, biblical creationism, there is absolute meaning, and we derive the meaning of life is linked with the biblical notion of being created in the image and likeness of God. All right. So now, from a creation perspective, if we are created by God, in the context of suffering and evil, when you face suffering, when you face evil, it does not mean that there is no meaning in life. Because often when we encounter suffering, we ask ourselves, what's the meaning of all of this? Often when we are going through something challenging, we have the tendency to question whether there is any meaning in life. From a creation perspective, just because you are suffering, it does not mean that life has no meaning, okay? It doesn't nullify the meaning of life, all right? And just because I don't understand why there is evil and suffering, that doesn't mean that there is no meaning in life. Now, I personally understand why there is evil and suffering. But what I want to indicate today is this. Just because I suffer, that does not nullify the fact that there is meaning in life. Why? Because from a creation perspective, there is absolute meaning because we are created with a purpose by God, all right? And I have intrinsic value because I am created in the image and likeness of God, and so are you. The fact that I suffer, it does not nullify me being created in the image and likeness of God. It doesn't nullify the fact that my origin in this universe is because of God. So suffering and evil from a creation perspective doesn't nullify the meaning of life. Life still has meaning. We just have to reconcile the existence of evil with the existence of God. Now, that's for another video, but I just wanted to indicate that, okay? Another reason why people often question the meaning of life, or when they question whether life has any meaning, that's a better way to put it. Let me repeat it. Another reason why people question whether life has any meaning is, from a Christian perspective, is when they don't have their prayers answered. And people will say, God, I'm asking you for something and you're not giving it to me. So what's the purpose of all of this? What's the point? There's no meaning in having a relationship with you. Well, let me bring something to your attention. What if you are asking for something that is not good for you and God is withholding it on purpose from you? You see? So it doesn't mean that when God doesn't answer your prayer, then God doesn't care and maybe he's abandoned you. And then you can say, well, life, what's the point of all of this? What's the meaning of all of this? No. What if you're asking something that is not good for you? What if it is good, but it's not at the right time and God doesn't want to give it to you yet? Now, with this answer, I am not saying that God will never give you something you insist for. We have biblical examples, a lot of examples. I'm just going to give one example. The Israelites asked God for a king. God didn't want to give them a king. They insisted and insisted and insisted. God finally said, okay, since you insist, and since I respect free will, I'm going to give you a king, but this is not what's best for you. But I'm going to give rules to minimize the danger. A king should do this, should do this, should do this, should do this. He shouldn't do that. He shouldn't do that. But it wasn't God's primary will for them. And then you know what happened? There was no good king in Israel. And all the kings committed a mistake that cost the people, many of the people, their salvation, their lives. But all the kings had a negative impact in Israel. And God never wanted that, but the people insisted. So there are times where God does give us things we insist that he doesn't want to give to us initially. But what I started out with is this: just because your prayer at time isn't answered, it doesn't mean that now Christianity doesn't make sense. All right. Now there are other things that I can deal with, but as I said, because of the lack of time that I have, I'm going to stop over here. But I will find time in the near future to record a lengthier video. But anyways, I hope that this at least gears you towards the right path in seeking for an answer. Always try to question your doubts. Try to question your answers. Just because something doesn't go your way, it doesn't mean that there's no meaning in life. There may be other reasons behind it. So I hope that this helps.